Detroit has lost an enormous number of people who used to live in the city but have chosen to move away. The 2010 census puts the city population at about 738,000 souls. We're going to talk about that next right here on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
What do you get if you equip the standard Lexus ES more like some others in its class? Perhaps it's more a question of what you don't get. The Lexus ES Standard is nothing short of extraordinary.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.
Hello, I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. Today we're going to talk about possibly trying to solve a problem that exists in the city of Detroit, and we're going to be generally talking about right-sizing the city and talking about it in general. We're going to start with Joe Veryser, who's the professor at LTU, which is Lawrence Technical University, and you're the head of the Michigan AIA, Architects Institute of America, right?
The Detroit chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Okay. We're one of the chapters in the Michigan AIA.
And Robert Piatek, also the same discipline, architecture, right?
That's correct, yes.
And have the two of you worked together on
I'm a member of the Detroit board, also a director, and involved in the Urban Priorities Committee.
Well, tell me what you think about the present status of the city of Detroit. Now, just the city, not, let's go from the river to 8 Mile Road to the outer boundaries.
Well, as a resident and an architect, I mean, the status is that we are losing population, and the city, population-wise, is shrinking. We still have a number of core neighborhoods that exist, but we've lost a lot of people. We have, although we're losing a lot of people, we're getting some young people, and we're getting...
I understand that. They're trying to get back into the Midtown corridor, so to speak. But when you talk about losing, are we losing people because of jobs? Are we losing for other reasons?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I was born and raised in Detroit, so I'm very familiar with it.
Me too.
Yep. And I've seen it grow from where it is now, about numbers just a little greater than where it is now, to almost 2 million, and then now back down. And I've followed it a bit and see that it's really an issue of race to the suburbs initially. But in today's climate, it's more a matter of the reaction to the economy. Now, the population's been declining for more than just a year or two with the economy.
Well, the last 10 years,
but you can, but you can see that it's accelerated in the past couple of years because people are now trying to follow where the jobs are.
Well, so it is, you're saying jobs. I mean, I can't, yesterday I told you that Mayor Bloomberg decided on national television that he had the answer for Detroit. He said, you have so much vacant space, why don't we send a lot of people who are aliens to come and live in Detroit? Well, that's fine. We were built on aliens base, but the point is, where are the jobs for them? You're going to send them here for what purpose? Our infrastructure, our social infrastructure won't support that. I mean, we're having a difficult time as it is. But I, too, born and raised and educated in the city of Detroit, never thought that I would leave the city. The reason for me was the educational system, were the public schools. That was the reason that I left the city. Now, is that part of what's driving people out of the city?
It certainly is. Just in my neighborhood in Lafayette Park, I have a good friend who lived there all his life. He was born and raised there. He went to the Chrysler School, and he got married and started to raise his children there. And it became for him a matter of schools, but also the amount of dollars that he was paying in terms of property taxes, insurance, and as he looked to what was available in the suburbs in terms of good schools close by, also not having to pay the penalty for insurance and the property taxes, it was a decision that he reluctantly made.
Do you think the 1% city tax hurts people in terms of where they're going to work? Or
I think it does hurt people. It is a penalty, and you have to look at that in your total, especially with this economy, with shrinking payrolls and incomes. People are having to make hard choices.
You described some cores. There are some cores in the city of Detroit that actually work. Where are they located?
That's more yours.
Well, I mean, I've lived in a number of areas in the city of Detroit, but if you can name them, some of them are historic. You've got Palmer Park, you have Indian Village, you have Lafayette Park, you have the Rosedale Grandmont area, to name a few.
Right, there's some magnificent homes when you talk about the Palmer Park location. But how would you restructure the city? Is there a way, because we knew that we failed without rapid transit. That was one of the failures years ago. But how would you go about, as a person who does these things, how would you go about redesigning the city of Detroit?
It's not only a difficult thing to answer, it's almost impossible. And the reason is, most other cities that have run into a problem, whatever the size, the largest cities, have always had a pocket of area where there was a problem to be dealt with.
Right.
Detroit is faced with a boundary-to-boundary problem, so it's very large. Mass transit was resisted for a whole host of reasons over the years.
Right.
But where it has been brought in other cities, it has at times not solved the problem of an urban environment. All it's done is made it easier to get to the suburbs and then take a car from there to go home. So mass transit is a part of the solution to draw people in, but you still have to have the infrastructure here, the jobs and the schools, the nice neighborhoods to draw people back into the city.
Well, here's the thing. There was a time when I lived in a neighborhood, my paper route was there, the school was within walking distance. You walked to the butcher, you walked to the baker, walked to the drugstore, and there seemed to have been, every 10 blocks, there were these neighborhoods. They were real neighborhoods in the city of Detroit. It didn't matter if you were on the east side or west side, wherever, they were neighborhoods. They disappeared. Now, people blame the malls on that, but I'm not certain. But it was a interesting way to live, having your own community within the city. Is that day gone forever?
I think a good part of it is because we live differently. Our expectations are different in so many ways. I mean, just think of something as simple as air conditioning and what it has done. You used to have people that went out and walked to get fresh air in the summertime.
Sat on the front porch.
Sat on a front porch. You got to know your neighbors. I live in a suburb today. I hardly know my neighbors. We live in our cocoon. We close the door. We put the air conditioning on, and we don't know our neighbors.
Right, and there's no central gathering place because they get in their cars and go to grocery stores, supermarkets, which may be miles away.
That's correct.
Even sports. I mean, the kids who are involved in sports are on leagues where they have to travel to different areas. So, I mean, traveling leagues.
Are we watching the end of the big city? I mean, other cities are not doing as well, too. There's other problems in Pittsburgh. There's problems in the outskirts of Chicago and parts of Chicago. There's a lot of cities that are not flourishing. Is the paradigm shifting? Are we into a different mode of what we call quote-unquote cities?
I think the density of cities is going to come back out of necessity. You know, we've changed, as I started to say, about lifestyle. There was a time, and we can all tell stories of back when we were kids. Well, in Detroit, you've been from here all your life. You may recall that side streets didn't used to get plowed, did they?
No, they
and
didn't
used to
plow.
drive in slush.
We had alleys, though.
And we had alleys. I mean, we've come to have far greater expectations. And until those expectations can get met, like now, in the past few years, they started plowing streets. A simple example. Until we start bringing those amenities into the city that cause people to migrate into the suburbs, you're not going to draw the people back because they have expectations. The other thing I think that is going to come along is just plain economics. I mean, it's easy to use gasoline as an example today.
The price, right?
I mean, it's an easy shot.
Hopefully when this show airs, the price will be down to reasonable limits and you won't need a bank loan when you go to the pump.
Yeah, right. But the more we get into the cost of things being high, like fuel or whatever, vehicles, and if we start to pull back a little bit on what we call a standard of living, just in order to be competitive internationally, I think you're going to find that it is less convenient for people to be remote, but it isn't going to happen overnight.
What does Mayor Bing have in mind? I mean, he seems to have the plan. He said, we have a plan. We're going to tear down vacant homes, build parks, so forth and so on. Has anyone put a plan on the table and said this is going to be it?
It's a plan in the works.
It is.
That's part of why all these studies are being done, to look at what is being done, what has been done in Cleveland, what's being done in Youngstown, what's being done in Pittsburgh.
What has been done in Cleveland? I'm sort of curious because it was so similar to Detroit. I used to spend my summers there, and it's a very similar town.
But smaller. The problem in Detroit is it's so vast. Cleveland had a perception problem, the mistake on the lake.
Right.
They had mass exodus of people to the suburbs. They did a number of things. They created a different perspective with marketing, with promoting the areas in Cleveland. They took some of the warehouse districts, created those into lofts and condominiums, and began to attract people back. But it's a much smaller area than Detroit has. It's the largest urban area in the country. So,
do you think that we should close off part of it?
Well, that's part of the concept plan that I've heard some of the staff from Mayor Bing's office talk about. Take certain, and it's made the press, take certain parts of the city and slowly wind it down and say services there are going to be less, and slowly start to identify areas that will not be supported any longer in terms of a busy city, an urban, classic urban environment. At the same time, you have efforts afoot to try to get back into urban agriculture. Now, that's going to take a little adjustment and getting used to as well.
Well, people are always throwing plans out and saying, you know, here we are. Let's downsize so we have better infrastructure. We can supply police departments. We can bring the police officers back and let somebody give them the down payment for homes and have them live here and things such as that. It seems that we're all out grabbing ideas, putting them on the table. Some work and some don't. We're going to take a break. There is a group, though, that has an idea that they think could work if we could just get it off the table and get it into action, and they think that they're going pretty far with it. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back in 20 seconds.
Legal referrals and more information on this and other related topics are available on our website at www.dueprocess.tv. There you'll find information on today's program, helpful hints to legal issues, support materials, and lawyer referrals. You can also stream previous episodes of Due Process.
Well, thank you. We're back on Due Process, and we've been talking about right-sizing the city of Detroit or doing something innovative. I'd like to welcome Stephanie Johnson-Cobb. Thank you for being here, Stephanie.
Thank you. It's great.
Okay, and you're seated with William Jones. Mr. Jones, I notice that you have the same lapel button that Stephanie has.
And that lapel button represents Focus Hope.
Okay.
The bright and shining lights here in Detroit.
So you heard us talk about the gloom and doom scenario that, you know, we've got a lot to do in a large area. the city of Detroit has a great amount of square footage, so to speak. What is your project?
Well, we call our project the Hope Village Initiative, and we've decided that we're going to be extremely active in the neighborhood right around Focus Hope. It's about 100 square blocks or 1 square mile, and we're concentrating our efforts right there because we think that that's a neighborhood with great assets and great opportunity for continued viability.
Tell me some of the things that you are doing to make this an area that people want to be part of.
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach. We're taking the perspective that education is absolutely critical, and we're leveraging our experience with adult education and workforce development, as well as with child care and early childhood development, and filling in the blanks, such that we've got a continuous pipeline there in what we call the Hope Village. And we want that to be an opportunity for, an excellent opportunity for kids to be educated. And that forms the spine of our efforts in that regard. And around that, we're building the other services and supports that communities need, that neighbors want, in order to have a great community.
Well, Stephanie, what is anyone helping to fund this project, this initiative?
Is anyone helped to fund the initiative?
Yeah,
well,
I mean, where are you getting the funds for this?
Our initial efforts were not funded per se. We're seeking funding. We've applied for the Promised Neighborhood funds, although we weren't awarded that grant opportunity as part of our planning efforts. But overall, it's a collaborative of community residents and Focus Hope being the lead agency convening resources to do this work.
Okay, now how many blocks do you have? You got how many miles do you have?
It's 1 mile with 100 blocks.
Okay,
community blocks.
It has 100 blocks, 1 mile. Now, is there a school, elementary, intermediate, and a high school connected to that 100 blocks?
Well, we've been partnering with 3 schools, one of which is an elementary and DPS school. The other is a middle school, or K through 8, and then we're also working with a charter school in the area. The actual high school or feeder high school for our area is actually maybe 2 miles down away from our target area.
Do you have the other essentials, the grocery stores within reach, the drugstores within reach, the department stores within reach to satisfy the needs of the people in that square block area?
Well, we've been working to develop a commercial district along West Davison. Our boundaries are actually Davison to the south, Dexter to the west, the Lodge Freeway to the north, and Hamilton to the east.
Okay.
So within that area, we do have some choices for grocery stores, some retail, but we're continually trying to improve and to develop it.
Is the idea to solidify this section and say, look what we've done. We've been able to accomplish this, bring people back into it, get rid of some of the blight, and have a good, solid neighborhood. Because we talked here about some core neighborhoods around the city. Is your idea to have it expand throughout the city as it becomes more successful?
That is our hope, that through our efforts that we will be able to serve as a model that can be implemented all across the city and across this nation. So,
well, has the mayor weighed in on this? Are you getting assistance or at least encouragement from the chief executive?
Mayor Bing is aware of our plans, as are the other planning officials in the city, and indeed I sit on the Detroit Works project. So we've been about as transparent and as sharing of all the information and our objectives as we possibly can. We don't see this as a short-term effort. As a matter of fact, we adopted a big, hairy, audacious goal for this, such that within 20 years, all of the residents of our neighborhood will be well-educated, economically self-sufficient, and living in a safe and nurturing community, and those are all the things that we think to be essential.
Okay. You heard Mr. Veryser and Mr. Piatek talk about the fact that there are reasons why people have left the city of Detroit. All of us are born and raised in Detroit, and there are reasons. One was as Mr. Veryser said, was education, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Do you have questions for them? You can just weigh in, because it sounds like you have a good thing going.
Okay.
Well, I'd just like to weigh in. I think that our effort, our core, our spine for this entire initiative is that we have a great school or great schools in that neighborhood, and in so doing we'll be able to attract people in and build the amenities around it. We also want to have a great restaurant in our neighborhood. We want to have other access to other things. There is a grocery store nearby, there's a hardware store nearby, so we can start to build on this framework. I'd also point out that we've got other neighborhood partners investing in that neighborhood. Presbyterian Villages of Michigan has put a senior citizens complex in, and it's beautiful. It's fully occupied with more than 100 seniors on the waiting list. Lutheran Child and Family Services is putting in 24 townhomes right down the street from our headquarters, and those will be committed to folks with to low-income families and folks exiting foster care. And you might have heard about Neighborhood Services Organization purchasing the Bell Building and investing quite a bit of money to create a permanent transformative housing there.
Is that the former Michigan Bell?
That is indeed.
Okay. That's my neighborhood, so I remember that. Gentlemen, what do you think of the idea?
I think this is exactly the kind of thing that needs to happen in all of our existing urban centers or communities if they're going to continue. I think William hit exactly on the criteria that has to be there. But then there needs to be the ongoing support of the city and services. And it's not, so the goal, and I think the formula is there and can be applied to other neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Joe?
I think the issue boils back down to a little bit, and someone chime in on this. First of all, the community has to care enough to want to make a change. Something has to be bad enough, or you have to care enough, and then you have to have a vision, and then you take the step. I think they've taken the step, and I think that's what counts, and I think that's how it starts. And now you have to have the momentum and somewhat of a, what I'll call, master plan, so that it fits in. It doesn't become an island, isolated, so that whatever happens adjacent to it starts to make some sense.
Well, are there plans for the adjacencies? For example, can someone copy your format and say, okay, now on the other side of Dexter, here's what we're going to do? Same thing that you've been doing. Is that possible?
Oh, please. Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, by being open with our planning, and these boundaries that we describe are not fixed and firm boundaries. They're boundaries that we needed to establish in order to develop a framework in which to work initially. But it's our hope and our expectation, well, more our expectation and our hope, that as we're successful, other community-based organizations like Focus Hope will replicate what we're doing and be successful in their own communities. That on the other side of Dexter, on the other side of Davison, folks will embrace what's happening and have it ripple throughout their streets as well.
And
Go ahead, George.
I'd like to add a few comments as well. One of the things that we've seen happen as people have heard about the Hope Village initiative and our plans, the momentum is growing. A newly formed business association has formed itself on one of the commercial streets, not along our boundaries, but within our community. And what we've seen happen is, through their efforts to clean up and address issues along that particular avenue, they've actually started to grow beyond our borders, and we've started to attract partners who want to be a part of this particular commercial corridor development. So in addition to that, we have 2 block club associations that meet in our area, and we do have a plan to build block by block and create more block clubs and connect all of our stakeholders. So that process is underway, and I'm confident that we will be successful. Many of the residents are inspired, and they still have high hopes of our neighborhood abounding.
Right. Well, you have our hopes that it succeeds, and I want to thank Stephanie Johnson-Kopp and William Jones for having the ability, the vision, the foresight to force this to work. And thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So you see their concept is to grow from inside and grow out. instead of some overall plan to tear down this building, tear down that building, and put light rail through the center. I mean, they want to grow each community. So it sounds like a way to go.
It is, and it's not, the concept is not new. I mean, that is, other neighborhoods have done that. I think what Stephanie really addressed is that what has to happen is it has to grow beyond the borders.
Right.
You have to be able to make that grow and get those partners.
We're out of time, but if you can show people that it's worked in a certain geographic area in the city, then you can most likely encourage people. Let me thank you for being here. It's a tough problem. I'm going to be wrestling with this problem for the next number of years. Let's hope these little tools grow and people move back to it.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
What do you get if you equip the standard Lexus ES more like some others in its class? Perhaps it's more a question of what you don't get. The Lexus ES Standard is nothing short of extraordinary.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Live, local, and committed to Michigan's future. News Radio 950, WWJ.